Hello and welcome back, and today I want to do a very quick first impressions video on this. This is the Minisforum MS-02 Ultra, the hotly anticipated follow-up to the MS-01. Now, I am working on a full review, but to be perfectly frank with you, this thing is so mother effing hinch that review is going to take a good couple of weeks. I've actually got to bring in a bunch of 25 gig equipment just to do it. But in the first just shy of 48 hours that I've been playing with this thing, I've pretty much got 7 big takeaways about it, and I thought rather than wait until the review is done, for those of you that are considering this and considering the pre-order, because at the highest rate it's about near 1200 nicker for the highest highfalutin version, I wanted to put this video together now just to give you the cliff notes of things. Additionally, Minisforum have sent this device, but no money has changed hands. They're not getting any influence over this. They're seeing it at the same time you are. Now, the device arrives in a few different profiles. The one I've got here is the 285HX i9 version. It's the top one at $1,200, but you can get it a few different variations with a slightly scaled down CPU down to 16 core variation, an Ultra 5. But I will say with this one, this is kind of the highfalutin one because the extra lane allocation it brings also provides a bunch of hardware opportunities that we'll talk about. As covered already previously in a video we did a few weeks ago, it's got ECC memory support as well. It's got 25 gig network ports. The 25 gig version is only on that 285 HX i9 variation there. It's got 4 M.2 NVMe slots only in that. The other variations have only got 2. We'll get to that later on as well. It's got 10 gig natively alongside 80 gig USB 4 natively on board. So that's kind of Thunderbolt 5 without the licensing. And it arrives with an internal PSU, and it's got a bunch of PCIe slots. So let's get our hands dirty and talk about what we've learned in that first 48 hours. Early doors, while taking a lot of the B stock photos and video for this, the thing that stood out for me immediately is that 25 gig. Not just that it's got 2 25 gig network ports there on the rear, which in of itself really sets this apart from a lot of options in the market, but alongside that, they arrive on a dedicated PCIe card, not a surprise, but stick with me, that also has 2 M.2 NVMe slots on board. It's a combo card. I'm going to make a dedicated video just about the PCIe card inside this device. I've never seen it. A PCIe card with 2 25 gig network ports and 2 M.2 NVMe on board. There is no combo card in the market like this. QNAP and NAS brand have done a lot of work on combo cards over the years, but I've never seen a card rivaling this one. And we'll get onto those M.2 slots because there is some give and take there, but that PCIe card has got both heatsinks on board alongside active cooling across the whole card itself on an onboard controller, and it's plugged into a Gen 4x16 slot. More on that later on. Next up, something that I mentioned in my previous video that turned out to be wrong, the design of this. I assumed it was just going to utilize exactly the same chassis design internally as that of the MS-01 Max, an AMD powerhouse workstation that they released a little while ago. It's actually completely different. Under the bonnet inside here is a completely new design. And one might argue, and again I'll go into more thermal testing between now and the review, that there is so much packed inside there that the previous design just wouldn't work out. It still has technically the pull-out slot design, hopefully you're seeing that on screen, but it's not as easy and quick load as that of the smaller workstations there. It's a more traditional chassis design. They're kind of a micro variation of a desktop tower, but it's not quite as convenient as before. And the way they overlap a lot of the components are built inside, and with the active cooling running through the middle, the result is that although it is still using a much more convenient design compared to a tower, it's nowhere near as flourished and smooth and slick as that of the Minio workstations. And of course, with that changed design, a lot of you are going to be wondering about cooling, you're going to be wondering about noise, and of course, you're going to be thinking there about the power draw. Again, very early on, it's only been 48 hours, but I can say the following stats straight away. Number one, in terms of noise, when I've had the system setting up for a lot of my testing, downloading a lot of benchmark tools and a few games that we're going to be testing out for the graphical capabilities, we saw noise on just standard sitting there doing its thing at around 31 to 33 dBA, which is pretty good. Fan control, I think, is on the BIOS level, or we're going to be doing a dedicated NAS video on this one as well, I think. So it's going to be interesting to see how far fan control is outside of the BIOS level, or if it's going to be restricted just to that. Next up, in terms of power consumption, when we have the system running Windows, getting ready for those downloads, again, very domestic level stuff. We'll go into way more detail in the review. It's at around 50 or 60 watts. However, that 25 gig card gets hungry. If you remove the card or disable that slot, you actually can save yourself around 10 to 11 watts by removing that from the field of play. Something to bear in mind if you go to some of the configs that don't include the 25 gig option. Next up, the M.2 NVMe slots. As mentioned, there are 4. We've already established that 2 of those are on that PCIe card alongside the 25 gig, but the other 2 are native to the board based on the rear of the device. Now, according to specifications, the 2 that are on board the main motherboard internally are Gen 4 x 4, but looking at the PCIe lane layout, there seems to be an indication that one of them might be Gen 5 x 4, and I'm not sure whether that's been software brought down or separated out by bifurcation. But after I've done the preliminary base testing, I will be testing a Gen 5 SSD on that slot just to see if it is possible. Now, the 2 slots on the PCIe card there, that Wonder card that I can't wait to talk about on its own, if you use SSDs that are under 4 TB, you will be getting Gen 4 x 4 bandwidth allocation. But if you use larger SSDs at 8 TB, you're only going to see Gen 3 x 4. Now, I'm not quite sure why that is. I'm assuming the controller and the bifurcation that's separating those network ports in the M.2 NVMe's is somewhat sensitive to the large capacity NAND distribution on the SSDs and other cool sentences, but I am interested to see why that is, and if you know before my review, let me know in the comments. Keep in mind, this has not got a lot of space to play with there, and the kit does arrive with an additional heatsink for the secondary slot with the base SSD that it includes if you go for the pre-populated model, already having a heatsink pre-attached. Why is that interesting? Because there's not a lot of space. I had to use an especially low height M.2 NVMe. Again, I only raise it because it's something of a concern if you want to use SSDs that have got a pre-attached heatsink, but it does arrive with heatsinks in the retail kit anyway. Next up, I want to talk about those PCIe slots. There are 3 inside. Now, one of them is occupied by the 25 gig card, but of course, if you go for one of the option configurations that doesn't have the card, then you're going to have that up for grabs. There is a Gen 5 x 16 slot that amazingly isn't the slot occupied by the 25 gig card. The one that is occupied by the card is a Gen 4 x 16 slot. And finally, there is a Gen 4 x 4 PCIe slot there. What's interesting is how the hell they've managed to get 3 PCIe's in this workstation. Yes, it's bigger than the Mini MS-01 chassis, but it's only about maybe twice, maybe 2.5 volumetrically in terms of physical scale. I've not done the maths yet. But a 3 PCIe slot chassis at this, yes, you're going to have to use very lower profile cards, and you're going to have to think about the airflow through the whole device, but still, that's a lot of PCIe that they have managed to cram inside this. They've even included additional cables off the PSU there for those cards. So you've even got, I think it's a 4-pin, I'll have to double check, but a 4-pin power coming off the internal PSU for those PCIe cards. Next up, RAM. Originally, when we heard about this device, it did say that it supported ECC memory, and it does, but only that 285HXi9 version. So keep that in mind. But interestingly, it's the way SODIMMs have been distributed. Now, there are 2 SODIMM slots alongside those M.2 NVMe's we mentioned earlier on, supporting SODIMM DDR5 ECC in this configuration and non-ECC in the others as mentioned, and it's 4800 megahertz memory, kind of surprising there, but again it's ECC, so some of those do have lower performance compared to other DDR5 SODIMMs. But interestingly, it's the other 2 SODIMM slots. They're located behind the channeled CPU kind of vapor chamber cooling slot, and they not only are they located just behind it, but they've got their own dedicated heatsink. Now that looks like it's something that had to be added because of the airflow of that the CPU cooling, but interestingly, it's just a much more aggressive cooling system for those, and clearly that is something that's been picked up in development, that they've had to apply this tailor-made angled heatsink there. And finally, let's talk about cooling. As mentioned, it is a different enclosure here compared to that of the M1S1 Max, but the CPU cooling is kind of the thing that's selling the show here. We've already touched on the fact it's got an internal PSU. That is an internal 350 watt PSU for that matter. So space inside this thing, how is this breaking the laws of frigging physics? But the main CPU cooling system there is 2 fans located onto a large vent chamber with piping from the CPU cooling running all the way through it. And that fan goes all the way through this system front to back. And although it's very early thermal measurements, I just wanted to include it just for that baseline setup while we had the device up and running. The internal and external thermals were as follows. Around the edges of the case, I'm sorry there's stuff cluttered around the desk kind of knackering with some of the thermals there. Again, we'll do better ones for the main review. It's around 40 degrees around the edges of the case. Around the front panel where there is an active cooling fan directly in sight, it's around 31 degrees overall at the front of the system. And on the sides, the side ventilation panels there we could see inside, that was around 40 degrees. And on the rear, when we had the 25 gig card inside and we had a 10 gig connection as well, we saw it around 44 to 45 degrees. So again, not tremendously high or tremendously low numbers there, but these are not representative. Same with the sound, same with the power draw. None of these are representative of extended testing. They are only representative of the 24 to 48 hours that this device has been setting up for the mainline testing. But that's it. This has been my first impressions of using this device. Again, if you need any more for noise, the system has been running throughout the course of this video thus far. So if it has been picked up on the mic, that's a good indicator. But nonetheless, we do have a bigger review coming out on this, but it's going to take time. And a lot of you were just asking about, is this thing worth waiting for? And I'll say right now, early indications are good. I do have my concerns about thermal. I do have my concerns about how much is being crammed in here. But overall, so far, it's been a very pleasing experience. And that PCIe card, chef's kiss. But look forward to the full review very, very soon. And otherwise, I will see you next time.